Chaos and speculation. Two things that surround the world of college football. First, as we are getting close to the end of the regular season, and as coaches are in the process of changing jobs. Breaking news earlier today, Chip Kelly will be the next head football coach at UCLA, coming out of retirement after taking a year off after getting fired by both the Philadelphia Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers in the NFL, after leaving Oregon to go to the NFL and then getting fired. So he comes back to college, comes back to the Pac-12, a conference that he had left 5 years ago, to go get a better job. Obviously didn't work out. His record, I think, speaks for itself. I'll get into everything right now, and how I'm going to do this. I might as well announce the schools that have openings, and then one that I think could have an opening as early as tomorrow. Today's Saturday, the 25th of November 2017. 7 schools already have openings: Ole Miss, Oregon State, Florida, Tennessee, UCLA, Arkansas, and Nebraska. Texas A&M is that other school that I think could be open if they decide to fire Kevin Sumlin. Oregon State and UCLA, especially UCLA, have been filled. Chip Kelly has signed on to be the next head football coach for the UCLA Bruins. 5-year, $23 million deal. First reported by the LA Times earlier this morning. If you did not hear that, did not see the news, now you have. Bo Baldwin, current Cal offensive coordinator, former Central and Eastern Washington head coach at the FCS level, is going to be the next head football coach at Oregon State, taking over for Gary Anderson, who stepped down back in October. And then Chip Kelly is going to be taking over for Jim Mora, who UCLA fired on his birthday, and then UCLA hires Chip Kelly on his birthday. So UCLA must have a thing for birthdays and head coaches. Other schools, I'll throw this in here as well before I forget. I have a list of coaches, and I'm gonna go school by school, tell you who I think will be a good fit for those schools, and go from there, really. But other schools that say their head coach leaves to go to a bigger school, those schools are also going to open up. So that's why it's called the coaching carousel. It's chaos, and it's hectic, and it's all about speculation until the deal is done. So sometimes these jobs are filled in less than 2 or 3 weeks, and then some they take maybe a month and a half to fill, as schools obviously like to try to get their next head coach in there as soon as they can, so the head coach has time to go out and recruit, sign players. And especially this year, you got the early signing period on December 20th, and then you'll have the regular signing day the first Wednesday in February. But Chip Kelly, as I said, breaking news, going to be the next head coach at UCLA. As I said, record, I think, speaks for itself, especially in college and in the NFL. 46-7 overall in college at Oregon before he left the Ducks to go to Philly and then San Francisco. But he was 28-36 in the NFL with those two teams. That's why he got fired. He didn't. His expectations were higher than what a lot of people than what they ended up being. So college coaches, it seems like, that go to the NFL, they don't succeed, and then they come back and they do succeed. So maybe Chip Kelly, can become another coach on that list. Nick Saban comes to mind for me. That's already on that list. Coached at Michigan State, went to LSU, then he went to the Miami Dolphins, and then got fired by the Dolphins. Came back to college, went to Alabama, won a national championship in his third year, has won, I believe, 3 more. Since then, I believe he has 5 in total. He won a national championship at LSU. So, it's somewhat weird. Saban left the SEC to go to the NFL, came back to the SEC, has done well. Chip Kelly left the Pac-12 to go to the NFL, and now is coming back to the Pac-12 as well. Just 5 years later, obviously. Time will tell if he will have success. The thing with Chip Kelly is when he was at Oregon, he'd always recruit, not the biggest guys, and not the best guys. He'd get his type of guys, and that's what he tried to do in the NFL, and that's why it didn't work out. He would get his type of guys that he wanted, and that's the thing too. ADs and fans don't understand. It takes time for coaches to get their program the way they want. I'll get to some more breaking news here in a minute when I talk about Nebraska. But Chip Kelly, he'll get leftovers from USC. Mark my words on that, because there's kids that are going to want to play for USC, but they're only going to be able to sign 25 guys. And we might see guys end up transferring to UCLA because they know they might play if they are playing for USC at the moment, or in the future if they commit to USC and then want to transfer out anyways. Then they can do that. But Kelly, he'll get his type of guys. He'll get leftovers from USC. He has more ties to the West Coast, and I am sorry. I was going to try to get this video out late Thursday night, late Thanksgiving night, early Friday morning, early Black Friday, but I did not. I'm sitting here Saturday, the 25th now, recording this, and I'm glad I did wait a little bit, because we did get breaking news. Chip Kelly is the new head coach at UCLA. Wasn't going to be any speculation if he was going to go there or Florida. I thought he'd go to one of the two. Florida I thought was the better job, but UCLA is the better fit, and he ended up choosing UCLA. So Chip Kelly is the next head coach at UCLA, and we'll have to see how he does. He has coached in the Rose Bowl before, so his new home stadium, the Rose Bowl, one of the most iconic stadiums in the world, is home to the UCLA Bruins, if you did not know that. And he's won a Rose Bowl, like I said, so he should be able to win, and he should be able to win early. There's going to be a lot of high expectations for him. He knows there's going to be pressure, but he has won at the collegiate level before, in the Pac-12 before, unlike he did in the NFL. So Chip Kelly, I think, good fit at UCLA and a good hire by UCLA. They needed to hit a home run. They haven't really had a big name head coach in a while. So as I said, Bo Baldwin is going to Oregon State. He's currently the Cal offense coordinator, former Central and Eastern Washington head coach, led Eastern Washington to a FCS national championship. His offenses can put up points, especially against Pac-12 schools. They would always play a Pac-12 school every year, at least every year that he was with Eastern Washington. And the record, I think, was like 1-5, but they were playing the best of the best in the Pac-12. and he was still putting up 40 plus a game. So once he gets his type of players that he wants at Oregon State, Oregon's obviously the better school in the state, but he'll also get leftovers from Oregon, and he's another FCS coach that has jumped from the FCS level to the FBS level, the Division I level, to become a head coach. And in recent memory, FCS coaches that have made the jump have had success. Chip Kelly from New Hampshire to Oregon after being an OC there for a while under Mike Bellotti, and then Brian Kelly as well. No relation, if you're wondering, between Chip and Brian Kelly either. But Brian Kelly, he made the jump from Grand Valley State, I believe it was, coached at Central Michigan, Cincinnati, and now he's at Notre Dame, and he's been at Notre Dame since, I believe, 2010. So 2 official new head coaches. The Baldwin deal, I think it's going to take a little while for that to go through, but it is official that Chip Kelly is going to be the next head coach for UCLA. And other breaking news, as I said, as there was 2 breaking news stories today. Chip Kelly to UCLA is one, and then Nebraska fired Mike Riley after 3 seasons with a 19-19 record. After a 4-8 record this year, made it to 2 bowl games. Really only should have went to 1, and that would have been last year, his second year in Lincoln. Went to a bowl game his first year, even though they had a 5-7 record, due to the fact there wasn't enough teams to play in bowl games that year that had winning records. So Nebraska was chosen as one team to fill a spot. I believe they played UCLA in the Foster Farms Bowl that year as well, in Santa Clara, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe they won that game as well. So that was good for the Big Ten. I think it's not fun to see coaches get fired, but I think it's good for the Big Ten that Nebraska is trying to finally go out and get a big name coach. They really haven't. They've done well since Tom Osborne was there 20 years ago when they won their last national championship in '97. But the coaches that they've had haven't been able to get over the hump. And, I don't think they should ever fire Frank Solich, but they did. He's still having success at Ohio. I don't think they ever should have fired Bo Pelini. He's having success at Youngstown State. And, now they're looking for another head coach 3 years after they just hired Riley. Couple guys for Nebraska come to mind. Scott Frost, obviously, was a former quarterback for the Cornhuskers back in the late 90s. Was the starting quarterback in 97 when they won their last national championship. So Scott Frost, could be a good fit. He's currently the Central Florida head coach. Florida is also going to be going after him. But I think, and I've said it before in here, I think deep down, if Nebraska comes calling for Scott Frost, it's going to be hard for him to turn down his alma mater, especially if they're offering him millions of dollars, more millions of dollars than what Florida will offer. And I think Scott Frost, will be the next head coach at Nebraska. He could be the next head coach at Florida. If Florida doesn't get Frost, they could get Dan Mullen, former Florida assistant, currently the Mississippi State head coach, has been in Starksville since 2009, has a overall record of 69-46, 5-2 in bowl games, and he's going to another bowl game this year. And it's hard to win in the SEC West with Alabama, Auburn, Iron Bowl. Just got over there a little bit ago. I'll talk about that next week in my college football. It'll be week 14. It'll be the conference championship preview. So that game just got over, as I said. It's hard to win the SEC West. Arkansas is, another tough team. They fired Brett Bielema though because he didn't succeed in Fayetteville. But if Florida can't get Scott Frost, I think they could go after Dan Mullen, former Florida assistant, as I said, under Urban Meyer. Charlie Strong, another former assistant under Urban Meyer. Charlie Strong, I think, is better at recruiting than Dan Mullen, but Dan Mullen, his offenses, he knows how to coach offense better. Florida is looking for offense. They haven't really had good offense or good teams since Urban Meyer was there. So I think, and that's why they're going after Scott Frost, because Central Florida's putting up a lot of points this year. And they're the first team ever in college football history in a 2-year span after going winless to go undefeated. 2015, they went 0-12. They just finished the regular season yesterday after beating Charlie Strong of South Florida and finished 11-0. They should have had 12 games, but the one was canceled due to the hurricane at the beginning of the season. So Dan Mullen, he knows offense. Scott Frost knows offense as well. The thing with Nebraska and Frost, it's his alma mater. I can't really see him turning them down. But if Florida offers more money, he could be the next head coach for the Florida Gators. Dan Mullen, Charlie Strong, Matt Campbell's another guy to look out for at Florida. Other than Scott Frost, Campbell's probably the hottest, youngest up-and-coming college football coach at the moment. Troy Calhoun, another guy, his name has been out there for numerous jobs in the past, and he has stuck with Air Force. I could see him potentially leaving. Kyle Whittingham, currently the Utah head coach, has been at Utah as the head coach since 2005, took over for Urban Meyer when he left Utah to go to Florida. So, does Whittingham leave? Does Whittingham do the same thing Meyer did and leave Utah and go to Florida? We'll see. I have, James Franklin and Joe Moorhead, both from Penn State, on the list for Florida as well. James Franklin would be a big name hire for Florida if he would get the right, offensive coordinator. They could put up points, and that's what's happened the past 2 years here in Happy Valley. He went out and hired Joe Moorhead, and it basically saved his job, because if you go back and look at the 2014 and 15 season for Penn State compared to the 16 and 17 season, their offense, it's on two ends of the spectrum, so two different ends of the spectrum, and Moorhead's the reason why. And I think if Franklin didn't leave, and I don't think he will, I'm just putting his name on here, for the hell of it, basically. But I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if there is a big name head coach that leaves his school to go to another big name school. James Franklin, this could be the guy that Florida wants. He's coached in the SEC. He's won in the SEC, especially in the SEC East with, at the time, the worst SEC East school, Vanderbilt. And then he got his dream job at Penn State. Moorhead, though, I think would be a better fit if Florida can't get Scott Frost, Dan Mullen, Charlie Strong. I think Matt Campbell's going to stay put, to be honest with you. I have him on a list here for basically every school I'm going to be talking about. But I think he'll be staying put. His buyout is like almost $10 million. And Moorhead is only the offensive coordinator. And he's been a head coach before. He's won at the collegiate level. It was at the FCS level with Fordham. But then, as I said, you look at Penn State's offenses in 2014 and 15 compared to 16 and 17. The reason why Penn State finished 10-2 both years and won the Big Ten and went to the Rose Bowl last year and are potentially going to another New Year's Six bowl game this year is because of Joe Moorhead. That's what I believe. So Florida, I think you should go after Joe Moorhead if you can't get Scott Frost, Dan Mullen, Charlie Strong, and then potentially Matt Campbell unless Florida wants to pay out almost $10 million just to get him to come, and then you gotta pay him his money in his deal though too. So Lane Kiffin, another guy, currently at Florida Atlantic, having a great year. He succeeded at Tennessee. He was 7-6, and he went to USC. Got fired on the tarmac. He's a good offensive-minded coach. I could see Florida hiring him. I don't think Florida would make the mistake, though, in hiring Kiffin. He's only been at Florida Atlantic back as a head coach for a year. Maybe next year if there's a school looking for a head coach, and there will be. The coaching carousel happens every year. I think Lane Kiffin should stay put as well, so I'm going to cross him off the list. I have him on the list for Tennessee, I believe, just for the hell of it as well, because he was the head coach there before. But then, another head coach name that's popping up everywhere right now is Mike Leach, former Texas Tech and current Washington State head coach. If Florida wants offense, go after Mike Leach. His offense is in Lubbock with Texas Tech, and then he got run out of town. Were phenomenal, and it took him a couple years up there in Pullman with the Cougs, but he's been able to turn that program around now, and they are on currently against Washington in the Apple Cup, as it's a little past 8 o'clock Saturday night. So Florida, Scott Frost, Dan Mullen, Charlie Strong, Joe Moorhead, and Mike Leach are the guys I think they should go after. I'm going to let everybody know at the end of the show who I think will get each job. Obviously, UCLA already got Chip Kelly, and Oregon State's got Beau Baldwin, so those two are out of the question. But I'll let everybody know who I think Florida, Nebraska, Arkansas, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and then potentially Texas A&M if they do decide to fire Kevin Sumlin, who I think they'll hire as well. So just stay with me, as this probably will drag on, it seems like, but oh well. If you haven't already as well, go check out Across the Goal Line on all social media. Links are down in the description below: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe here on YouTube. Nebraska, I talked about Scott Frost there a little bit. Potentially going back to his alma mater. Like I said, if they do offer him, it's going to be hard for him to turn it down. Matt Campbell is another guy that they could potentially hire, but I think Campbell will stay put. Troy Calhoun, again, Craig Bull, former North Dakota State, current Wyoming head coach, former Nebraska player and assistant coach. His name's come up for this job before, as Scott Frost. Scott Frost's name has as well. Jeff Malkin and Ken Niumatalolo, both from the service academies, Navy and Army. Niumatalolo from Navy and Malkin from Army. Could potentially get this job if Nebraska wants to go back and go old school with the option. Both those head coaches know how to run it. And then Mike Leach. Mike Leach's name coming up, I think, for this job as well. Just because Nebraska wants offense as well, and their new athletic director, Bill Moos, was the athletic director at Washington State who had hired Mike Leach to Washington State. So, we could see a little reunion there. But we'll see. Leach's offense, the Big Ten has really never seen. So if that does happen, it'll be the first of its kind. But I really think Scott Frost will be the next head coach for Nebraska. And I mean, if I change my mind by the end of the show, I'll let you know. Like I said, I'm gonna let everybody know who I think will be getting each job at the end of the show. So just stay with me here. All right, moving on then. Arkansas just fired Brett Bielema. Auburn, I'll say this: they defeated Alabama in the Iron Bowl, 26-14. I don't see Gus Malzahn leaving Auburn now. If they win the SEC title next week, they're in the playoff. They're probably the favorite to win the national title. I had said that last week, I believe, that they should be the favorite after defeating two number one teams at home in 3 weeks, and now they have done that. Malzahn, former offensive coordinator for Arkansas, former Arkansas State head coach. They'd have to pay up for him. I think there's other guys out there though that could potentially get this job. Mike Norvell is one former player at Central Arkansas from 2001 to 5. And Arkansas is probably going to want to make a big name hire. They thought they did with Bielema. Well, they did with Bielema, and then it just didn't turn out. But Norvell, I think, would be a good fit. He's 17-6 right now, and 1 game short of, he's 18-6 now, because Memphis put up, I believe, 70 today against whoever the hell they were playing. So he's 18-6 in 2 years at Memphis after taking over for Justin Fuente, who's currently at Virginia Tech still. So Norvell could be a guy. Matt Campbell again, Troy Calhoun, Chad Morris, current SMU head coach, former Clemson offense coordinator under Dabo Swinney, had Taj Boyd and Deshaun Watson as his quarterback. So, we've seen what he can do with an offense. Neil Brown's an interesting name, I think. Current Troy head coach. He's coached in the SEC as an assistant before. Led Troy to an upset win over LSU down in Baton Rouge earlier this year. So keep an eye out for Neil Brown. Bobby Petrino as well. I know he's been the Arkansas head coach before, and then he got fired for having an affair. Brian Harsin is a guy you need to keep an eye out for, though. He's currently the Boise State head coach after taking over for Chris Peterson. He was also the Arkansas State head coach. He took over for Gus Malzahn after Malzahn left Arkansas State to go back to the SEC and coach Auburn. So does Harsin do what Chris Peterson did, and that's leave Boise State to go to a Power 5 school, as Peterson left Boise to go to Washington. I think this would be a good fit and good hire for Arkansas if that happened. He's an up and coming coach. He's not gonna. He'll want money. He's not gonna want a lot of money. And he has connections to the state as well already. As I said, being a head coach at Arkansas State for a year. So I think Arkansas, it'll come down to with Auburn beating Alabama. Now, if Auburn would have lost Alabama, I think Malzahn to Arkansas would be a no-brainer. But with Auburn winning, I think they'll extend him, give him what he wants, so that he doesn't walk. And Norvell and Harsin are the two options Arkansas needs to look at. Tennessee, then, John Gruden, obviously his name's going to come up. Former Oakland Raider and Tampa Bay Buccaneer head coach, won a Super Bowl in his first year with the Buccaneers after the Raiders traded him. He's going to want a lot of money. He's making a shit ton right now with ESPN. I think he's fine where he's at. Tennessee does need to make a big hire, but there's other guys out there that could fill this position and just do as good. And I think Mike Norvell, guy I talked about with Arkansas, if he doesn't get the Arkansas job, or if he wants the Tennessee job more, he should go after it, and Tennessee should go after him. As I said, he's 18-6 now in 2 years in Memphis. Does he leave a smaller school in the state to go to the state school? It's a good possibility. We could see that with Scott Frost or Charlie Strong, leaving Central or South Florida to go to Florida. So that would be interesting to see some coaches do that. Troy Calhoun, Matt Campbell, Chad Morris, Bobby Petrino, their names are going to be coming up for this job as well. David Cutcliffe's a guy to keep an eye out for. I know his age might be a factor. He has connections to Tennessee. He was the offensive coordinator back in the late 90s when Peyton Manning was there. T. Martin, another guy to keep an eye out for, current USC offensive coordinator. He played at Tennessee, he backed up Peyton, and then he won Tennessee the national title in 98. So former quarterbacks from the late 90s could be getting one's already got a head coaching job, Scott Frost at Central Florida, but T. Martin could be getting a head coaching job here very, very soon. As I said, there's going to be all these other small schools opening up as well. With these bigger name coaches leaving their respective school potentially and getting another job, so they'll open up guys that probably should keep an eye out for those type of jobs are probably the recently fired head coaches. Butch Jones, Mike Riley, Brett Bielema, Jim McElwain, who got fired by Florida, Jim Moore as well. The thing with Riley and Bielema and McElwain as well, I think it's a good possibility that they go back to where they came from, or where they have connections at, because it's all about connections and who you know. Bielema, former defense coordinator at Kansas State under AARP Bill Snyder, currently still the head coach in Manhattan. You could see Bielema, getting a defensive assistant job there, or in Piscataway with Rutgers, as Chris Ash was a assistant under Bielema at Wisconsin, Arkansas, and then left to go to Ohio State, and then he left to take the head coaching job at Rutgers. And then NC State, Dave Dorian, former Wisconsin defense coordinator. I believe he was Bielema's first defense coordinator after taking over the head coaching reins from Barry Alvarez. So Bielema, these former head coaches now, the ones that just got fired, keep an eye out for them, to get these smaller schools, or keep an eye out for them to get coordinator positions with schools that they have good relationships with the people that are there at the moment. So Mike Riley is good friends with Paul Chryst, at Wisconsin, so maybe he gets a quarterback coach or something along those lines there. And then Jim McElwain, he's been an assistant under Nick Saban before, so maybe he goes back to Alabama. We'll see. So Tennessee, I think they should go after Mike Norvell. Ole Miss, I'm trying to wrap things up here. Should be done here within the next couple minutes. Ole Miss fired Hugh Freeze. Matt Campbell again. As I said, he's probably the hottest up-and-coming coach other than Scott Frost for the job that he's done with Iowa State. Chad Morris and Neil Brown as well. Brent Venables, current Clemson defense coordinator. He could be getting a job at either Tennessee, Ole Miss, or potentially Texas A&M. Maybe Arkansas as well. We'll see. But Scott Satterfield, I think is a guy should keep an eye out for. Um, he's currently the Appalachian State head coach, former App State player. Would he leave his alma mater to get a bigger job? Only time will tell. We'll see. Ole Miss, I think, would be a perfect fit for him. He's not going to be getting a lot of attention in the first probably couple years. But then if he starts winning, as Hugh Freeze did, and the reason why he won was because he was violating NCAA rules. But if Satterfield starts winning, I think he could be the guy that could get Ole Miss back on track. Texas A&M, then, if they fire Kevin Sumlin, Jimbo Fisher might be a guy to watch out for to go to College Station. I don't know if he'd really leave Tallahassee, though, and leave Florida State. I just can't see that happening. Auburn, if Malzahn leaves to go to Arkansas, Fisher could go to Auburn. I think Auburn would be a better job than A&M at the moment. So Fisher could go there. Chad Morris, I think, is the guy for Texas A&M, though. If they do decide to fire someone, he's currently the SMU head coach, as I said, former offense coordinator at Clemson. He's been a high school coach in the state of Texas. There's nothing bigger than high school football in Texas. All those coaches know each other. All those college coaches know every single high school coach. And it's all about connections, as I said. I think if A&M goes after a former alum, Chad Morris, I think he could get the program the way that everybody wants it, and potentially get them back to prominence. A couple other guys I think you should keep an eye out for. Dino Babers at Syracuse, Manny Diaz, the current Miami defense coordinator, Brian Dable and Jeremy Pruitt, both Alabama coordinators, Bo Pelini, current Youngstown State head coach, Larry Fedora, current North Carolina head coach, having a bad year. Maybe he wants to get out of Chapel Hill. Art Briles, Les Miles, Al Golden, and Greg Schiano, though, are guys I think to add to that list of former fired coaches that could potentially get a job at a smaller school like Iowa State if Matt Campbell leaves, Memphis if Mike Norvell leaves, Central Florida if Frost leaves, Dino Babers or Syracuse if Dino Babers leaves, Louisville if Bobby Petrino, if he goes back to Arkansas or if he goes to Tennessee. I think he'll stay put in Louisville, to be honest with you. So I believe that's all I have. Let me look at my notes here real quick. I got a lot of notes for this coaching carousel that's currently going on in the world of college football. So that's what I said earlier. Just stick with me, hear me out on everything I have to say, and I think a lot of these have the potential of actually happening, and we'll see. We'll see. As as I said, only time will tell. And these deals should be done within the next week to 2 weeks. There's probably going to be that one job, though. It's going to take a while. Last year was Minnesota, because they didn't fire Tracy Claeys until after the bowl game, and then PJ Fleck decided he was going to stay with Western Michigan, and then he turned back on his word, ended up going to Minneapolis anyway. So yeah, that's all I have for this coaching carousel. As I said earlier, I was going to go through real quick at the end and tell you who I think will be the next head football coach at these respective schools. And I thank you for sticking with me this long. I know I'm getting past the 40-minute mark here, but I think Florida will hire Dan Mullen. former offensive coordinator under Urban Meyer, currently at Mississippi State. UCLA already hired Chip Kelly. Oregon State already hired Bo Baldwin. Scott Frost, I truly think, will be the next head coach at Nebraska. Tennessee, I think, will hire Mike Norvell, or Norvell, however you pronounce that. I think he'll be the one coach that jumps from a smaller state school to go to the bigger state school, leaving Memphis to go to Tennessee. Brian Harsin, I think, will go to Arkansas. Ole Miss, Scott Satterfield, and then Texas A&M, Chad Morris. And there's probably going to be, as I said earlier, a big name, hire that no one is going to expect. Say like James Franklin to Florida potentially. And there's probably going to be a big name fire that no one's going to expect either. Somebody at a big time school that really has done everything right, but then just out of the blue they fire him. Sort of like Frank Solich at Nebraska or Bo Pelini at Nebraska at the collegiate level. Lovie Smith is probably a perfect example in the NFL with the Chicago Bears. He has really been their best coach this century. And speaking of the NFL, I probably will do a coaching carousel video for NFL coaches when the time comes. It'll probably be right at the beginning of the new year, as Thanksgiving just wrapped up. Christmas is a month away now, and next week I will preview the conference championship games for college football, and the next week in the NFL. And then after that, bowl season's going to be here, and then the NFL season will be winding down, and then the playoffs will start for that as well. So hopefully you'll be listening when that time comes, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you disliked it, give it a thumbs down. And then, as I said earlier as well, be sure to go follow Across the Goal Line, as this has been Across the Goal Line. I'm your host, Luke Austin. Go follow Across the Goal Line on all social media. Links are down in the description below. And I will see everybody next week.